Danny Archer.
Honey bone.
Pleased to meet you. American, huh?
Guilty.
Well, Americans usually are.
Says the white South African.
I'm from Rhodesia.
We say Zimbabwe now, don't we?
Do we?
Everybody, listeners, hypothetical viewers, and dream travelers. This is Spine Crackers.
And you are? Oh, fuck.
Almost. We almost got it. Next time.
Shit. I'm Matthew.
Did you say you're Gabe already?
No, I didn't, but I am. I am.
That was the worst intro of any podcast ever.
How is it so tortured that this process?
Wow.
Guys, this is gonna be our 12th episode? We gotta get this shit together.
Yeah, I mean,
we only just started saying our name though, like 2 episodes ago.
That's true. We don't have to practice with that particular thing yet.
Yeah,
So
that was okay.
I'm Gabe. That's Paul and Matt.
That's Paul.
That's Paul.
Oh man.
Insert graphic on the video that doesn't exist.
And you are about to enjoy a nice episode, as you always are, with your hosts, Matt,
Gabe,
Paul,
Spine Crackers. This is Spine Crackers. Today, we're going to be talking about I don't even know what to describe it. This is not even a novella. This is like some weird. This is my pick. The name of the book is Great Work of Time.
Cringe name, by the way.
It pulled from what? I already forget. Some poem.
Yeah, it's in the text.
I think it was Back to the Future.
Easy. That's too easy, Paul. Come on now.
No. Sometimes simple is good. That's perfect.
Gabe laughed. All right, just because it's your pick doesn't mean you can't laugh.
Fine.
It's some weird poem about Oliver Cromwell or something.
And it's by John Crowley, and it's a time travel story basically.
Wait, Matt, why did you hesitate to call it a novella?
I just forget like what form it took, and I also still don't know what the fucking baseline length for a novella is, or like what constitutes a novella versus a super long short story.
To me it's sort of like the classic like pornography definition. It's just like, when you see it. And to me, this was a novella.
You don't think it's like how many grains of sand does it take to make like a heap? You know what I mean? Like
of course, yeah. It's a to use a little philosophy jargon, it's a Sorites paradox, and yeah, of course it is. But
Sorites?
Yeah, Sorites paradox, aka the paradox of the heap.
That's what that is. Okay, I knew okay. Yeah.
To me, I was thinking of this as a novella in my head, so I was just curious as to why you were hesitant about making that.
Just because it's still not clear to me, and I guess it never will be.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not, because if it ever is, we can stop. We'll have to stop having these discussions every episode.
Oh, God,
are you trying to make the difference between short story and novella? Is that the thing? Like, is it a short story or a novella? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't care that much, but
okay.
I know that also John Crowley it's also just based on like John Crowley's like publishability or how much he's in print, because I think this thing showed up before in like a collection, and I don't think it was ever published standalone, but maybe I'm wrong.
But I mean, for example, like a couple episodes ago we did Soul of Wood, Yakov Lin's. And that was published in a collection with other short stories, but I feel totally comfortable calling it a novella. So I just kind of was treating this the same way.
Okay.
And they're about the same length, I think.
Yeah, about 80 pages basically.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is my choice. Partially because it's a little shorter, and I chose a big chonky boy for my next pick. So like
spoilers.
Spoilers, but I thought I would ease it up.
It's Moby Dick.
It's Moby Dick. It's Infinite Jest. But also, I'd been meaning to read something by John Crowley for a while. When I was like deep into sci-fi fantasy stuff, his as like a preteen and like late teen, like 15, 13, 14, 15 years old, when I was like deep into escapism for reasons that I won't go into.
Are you not still? God damn, we all need it now more than ever.
Fair enough. But a book called Little Big, which of course I thought of Little Big Planet when I thought, and that's a good meme, and maybe we'll do it later. But was like a well-known, I would say, thing that was recommended to me at that age. And he was always a name knocking around in my head. And then
my first thought was Stuart Little. Stuart Little Big.
Little Big of heart and spirit. But so the name was always knocking around in my head. I was like reminded of him recently, and then I looked up this story, and it sounded like a very good companion piece to Lathe of Heaven. And so I also thought it would just be interesting for that reason, like another sort of high concept sci-fi fantasy story about, I don't know, like the intricacies and ethical nature of changing the world essentially through some obscure, like unexplained, basically like fantastical reason, and like what that does to people and what that does to like reality and this kind of stuff.
And I think it definitely follows in that same sort of tradition of Lathe of Heaven, where it's the mechanism by which the sort of sci-fi elements are operate is explained like just enough where you're not like,
right,
this is ridiculous, but not enough to the point that you're reading like a technical manual. Like that's not the focus. You know what I mean?
You know who was great at that, incidentally, was Michael Crichton. As like a Harvard MD, he had the perfect amount of just kind of like ambient, STEM fucking jargon rattling around in his head to like sell you a concept. And you're just like, why aren't there dinosaurs? You just be like, yeah, fucking do it and make the dinosaurs. It sounds totally feasible, because he creates like these phrases that have such potent kind of evocative power, but they're essentially black boxes. And yeah.
And I feel like this story is even less than that, right? We basically just get like, there's some mechanism by which essentially no spoilers. I mean, all spoilers, all we do is spoil things here. But time travel is discovered, and we have essentially like no concept or no understanding of how that actually happens. It's just sort of, there's you mentioned Michael Crichton, which I think is funny because the opening sort of chapter of the novella really reminded me of the opening scene of Jurassic Park with Dennis Nedry and the other guy, I forget his name, Dodson.
Don't know.
I think it's Dodson, when he meets him in a cafe in Costa Rica somewhere or whatever, and he's got the hat and he's got the sunglasses and whatever. It's that meme where he's like, we got Dodson here. And he's like, look, nobody cares.
Right.
It just
is that the opening scene?
I believe that's the opening scene of Jurassic
Park. Opening scene, or maybe the
second.
Park.
I think it might be the second scene.
Yeah, the opening scene Jurassic Park is the shoot ha scene.
You're right.
That's why.
It's the
second. That's why when you said that.
Scene.
That's why when you said that in the text, I was like, what?
Okay, well, I'm just fine. I'll jump off a bridge. It's fine.
Got you.
But now that you say that, I understand what you're saying. But in the text, I was like, am I missing something completely? Because there's no dinosaurs in this scene.
Anyway, okay, that's true.
Damn.
All right, that is a fair critique. Now, what the hell is this book actually about?
I guess I can say like that maybe the superficial plot lines of it, which are just this man develops a time machine.
Casper Last.
For probably more that.
Great name.
Pretty selfish reasons, I would say, like almost mundane, like and in so doing, I think like opens up what they call this thing called like orthogonal logic and orthogonal physics, where a timeline then splintered off at a an orthogonal angle from the current timeline, and created the possibility for, in the past, this secret society called the Otherhood, who were created off of a monetary endowment by the late Cecil Rhodes of South Africa. See, it's convoluted, and whose purpose is essentially to taking this technology and knowledge from the future, establishing themselves as a secret society that operates to perpetuate the supremacy of the British Empire by manipulating the past, and trying to continually fiddle with it and achieve peaceful results, quote unquote, but essentially just the sun never setting on the British Empire. And it seems mostly to be a book about like colonialism and specifically the British Empire, and with like sci-fi elements in it. But
it reads a little bit like historical fiction to me.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of literally is.
Which was very boring.
Were you bored?
Yes. Let me start this off from my perspective, saying that I was very bored.
Can I just say before Paul goes on, can I just say to all of our Instagram and Twitter followers, I regret burning my Jean Ray Time Cube meme on Sosaki's book, because this would have been much more appropriate.
Damn, dude. So you thought it was boring, Paul?
Yeah, I had a little bit of Yoonsville vibes from it, to be honest.
It's so different.
Well, and just the respect that there was like very soft sci-fi elements, and it was very wordy, and like, I don't know, just the general themes of time travel were very boring to me. Like, the main character, the first thing he wants to do is go back in time and steal a stamp. And I was like, dude, that's the most boring thing you can steal. This is a boring book already.
Well, okay, but wait, I will defend the stealing the stamp choice. Okay, so first of all, if you want to hear us talk about Oomsville, give us money and maybe we'll do it in the future. But I think stealing the stamp is explained, like the logic that Casper Last goes through to land on the thing of stealing a stamp and then essentially mailing it to his grandfather, who he knows will put it in storage that will wind up in his mother's attic that he will have access to in his current timeline. And it's a very rare stamp and it'll be worth a bunch of money when he gets it. I actually think that sort of that thought process is explained like really, really well. And maybe it's just because I'm like sort of like a, philosophy nerd. And I was like, oh yeah, this logically makes more sense than just like going back and fucking like, killing baby Hitler or whatever.
right.
Because like,
yeah,
I mean, I actually thought that it was a pretty sophisticated explanation or sort of walkthrough of the thought process of how to interact with previous timelines in a way that wouldn't sort of, or would have the least sort of chance of dramatically affecting the present. And okay, maybe it doesn't necessarily make for like a fucking crackling, blockbuster of a read, but I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I totally agree that it was very well thought out, and it was more of a concrete actual plan that you would have going back in time, which you wouldn't want to go back in time and steal the Declaration of Independence. You'd probably get caught.
Nicolas Cage.
Where did you sell it? Nicolas Cage.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
I don't know. I kind of wanted to come into this with a kind of a curmudgeon attitude a little bit, because I don't know.
Do it.
yeah, I just come back to like if a sci-fi story isn't gonna have like 4 elements or 4 lines or paragraphs of sci-fi stuff, and the first thing the guy's gonna do is steal a stamp, I'm just like, all right, this is boring.
You mean in the first?
And then it gets bogged down with like bureaucratic people in meetings. What bog? What?
No, I'm just
Bog?
bogged down. It's this. Okay, sorry.
No,
Paul's just talking about his favorite local bar.
Yeah.
I thought that you were just giving a shout out to the bog across the street from me.
I mean, always shout out to the bog.
The bog's great.
What a name for a bar. It's incredible. The Bog.
It's like the swamp
Yeah.
from MASH.
If we ever get famous, we need to delete this part of the episode because people will track down where Paul lives
And murder
Yeah,
him.
murder him.
I live directly across the street from it. In case you're wondering, I live in Montana, so you can look it up there.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, covered. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think I checked out pretty early on, and then I was like, I felt like okay about being checked out because it continued to be boring for me.
Well, okay, so I mean, I think we've so far given a little bit of a short shrift to the actual story because we've been talking about Casper Last and the stealing of the stamp, but that's really only about like a fifth of the actual story. Most of the story deals with a different group of characters entirely, right?
Well, this is what I was going to defend Casper Last for this reason. I like, clearly, first of all, Crowley is like very familiar with all of the other like a lot of time travel stuff and time travel narrative. Like he mentions the grandfather paradox, which is like an old kind of, conceit of like early sci-fi. And then like, I think he even kind of talks about how the tech used in the time travel process is like incredibly mundane and unremarkable, and the opposite of like, I think he's sort of painting it in contrast to like Jules Verne or whatever, and like the like shiny brass and steampunk shit that I forget the original Time Machine used. Who is the guy the time traveler? He's just called the Time Traveler, I think.
I have no idea. I think that's right, but I was also just thinking of someone just vaping and just being called Jewel Verne.
Dude, that's awesome.
That is good.
So I like this thing where like the guy who kind of precipitates the creation of this entire other secret society from the past is this kind of almost like boring genius, like this guy who's brilliant, but also because he's so smart in kind of like seeing through the veil of reality and inventing this orthogonal logic to time travel, he's also just this absolutely like just this dullard who is like, I just want to make enough money so that I can chill and like drink beers and be comfortable.
I mean, I don't know if I would call him a dullard. I would just say he's not sort of interested in exploiting his discovery.
He wants to destroy it
in any sort of grandiose way. Right, exactly. He wants to destroy it.
Well, I think the thing is like this man and the intention for the creation of this thing is in complete contrast to the characters we meet later. Like he doesn't even figure into the fucking story ever again, really. Except
no,
for, like,
I mean, I think the actual main character of the story is Dennis, right?
Yeah.
Dennis Winterset.
But I like this contrast.
Dennis.
I think this man who made this technology essentially for completely selfish and contrary reasons and was hoping to destroy it, creating a completely unintentional entire world-shifting reality is an important part of the I don't know, like the like point of the book. Like just, I don't know exactly what I mean by that, but just like something as mundane as trying to make some money through an extraordinary discovery even is enough to set certain things in motion that are insanely different.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the way that it's written is smart because basically we get the original scene of Casper Last going back in time with his invention to sort of send his future grandfather a letter with a very rare stamp that he will, later in his own timeline find hidden in his mother's attic. And then we sort of skip ahead to this character, Dennis Winterset, who's some sort of like provincial British governor in South Africa. Where is he at the time? I forget I'm bad at like British colonial names because it's no longer a country.
Rhodesia.
Is he in Rhodesia? Okay.
I think Winterset is in Rhodesia.
Okay.
Because he lives in a different reality from the one he eventually gets to.
Well, right. So he's traveling home on a rail line, right, from South Africa back through Cairo to England, and he has this encounter in Khartoum, right, which is in modern day Sudan, and is essentially sort of invited to this secret society that was founded by Cecil Rhodes, who is a real life person, a real life British colonialist, but in the world of the story, also founded a time travel society to keep the British Empire in power indefinitely, basically.
But Cecil Rhodes didn't intend for that. He just put in money to create a secret society, and that's
one of the sort of like fun wrinkles of the story, is that one of the like perpetual tasks of the society members is to keep going back in time and keep forcing Cecil Rhodes to appropriate this money in a very particular way, such that the society that they exist in is in the past founded. I just thought it was really, really well done and fascinating in that way.
And it's a pretty good way to critique, colonialism in general too. Like, I think this was a pretty decent like way of kind of creating almost a reductio ad absurdum style critique of like the goals of the British Empire itself, Cecil Rhodes' own worldview, and like also mingle that in with just a kind of critique of like narrative history and its truthfulness ever, by like just kind of making it a metaphor of just people continually fracturing the timeline by emphasizing something else or lying essentially, or just sort of like
it's very sort of fractal, right? Like it's the society, the otherhood, right? They keep going back and checking and like, okay, what happens if we do this? What happens if we do this? And it's a specific skill set that people have to learn to be able to go back and like not overly influence what happens in the future. And I think that it sort of becomes this really almost bureaucratic thing where it's which I think is a theme when you talk about books about empire, about colonialism. I mean, even like last week when we were talking about Nazi Germany, it's a sort of common thread when you talk about these sorts of expansive empires. And I think even in some of that earlier chapters, in the second chapter, when Dennis is sort of considering the British Empire on his train ride through Africa, right. I thought that was a really good description of that sort of vibe.
I think one problem I have with it being British colonialism is that it seemed to be kind of like pick your poison. Like there wasn't really any concise political discussion in terms of that for me. Like, to me, it could have been any empire. Like, what was the point of it being the British colonialism? It didn't really dive deep into the politics of it to a huge degree where it like affected me. So I didn't really see the point of that. I don't know.
Okay, I do have a pushback, because I mean, I do agree that I think that it's generally like a broad critique of colonialism, but
sure, yeah.
Even if you like You jokingly sent us an Amazon review earlier in the text today, and the person literally said, like, this felt particularly meaningful for me as someone from South Africa. Because it like really described a lot of like the sort of experiences that I've had and the vibes that I felt around, you know, being a post-British colonial, like in my post-colonial existence, you know. So I do think there's some specificities that you and I and Matt are probably missing.
But also it's one of the most famous, I would say it's the most dare we say accessible historically kind of like example of empire. Like the British Empire is probably the most famous one.
So is this trying to be like a general broad critique to the average reader, you think?
I don't know. I just think historically it might be the thing that people are most familiar with. I would say like the British Empire, which is literally just has been called that even, is probably the most well known. I don't know.
I think my question was for myself reading it was mostly just like, what exactly is the author trying to critique with this plot? And it never really came across to me other than like, it's a bureaucratic system that is bad.
I think but this is where I think Lathe of Heaven is a decent parallel, is just that like we have an entirely different method of manipulating reality, but I don't see it. Ultimately, it kind of amounts to something similar, which is just like you're not like individuals are not going to be able to harness this ability effectively. It's just going to lead to doom. Like you really can't fucking change. You can't just change things that you don't like by the reason of not liking them. It just invites disaster. I think that's more the takeaway.
Yeah. I think it did it in a much smaller, more I don't know. It did it in a much smaller scale, even though the reality was still shifted to a huge degree in this story. I just think that it like the point that Lathe of Heaven was trying to make came across like hit me over the head in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And this was just very like I'm trying not to use the word dry, but that's all that's popping up. It like all of its motives to me seemed very like under the table, kind of just like take from it what you will. I'm not going to tell you exactly what's happening here, and it's not going to be that interesting. But here's the story.
Well, I think it's super localized to literally like a span of time, even where they feel they can conceptually operate from.
Well, so yeah, I mean, right, like specifically in the timeline of the Otherhood, they have set rules for themselves, and this comes back to like fuck shit up later.
Right.
They can only go back exactly as far as the night that Cecil Rhodes died, I believe, which is where his will was written in a specific way so as to bequeath the money in a specific way such that the founding of the organization was possible. And I think they're not allowed to go, they're only allowed to go forward. I forget the forward bound.
I think they're only allowed to go to the point of Last's existence.
Right. Yeah. When the time travel was invented. Yeah, exactly. That's right.
To the foundational money,
which I think we're supposed to imagine is in the like 1980s or something.
Yeah, 1986.
Yeah.
83? I don't know.
So they're working in this bound, and I actually think
82?
The 85. I think that
84.
the it's supposed to almost be temporally parochial, where they're like not allowed to even go outside of this span of time, and that's supposed to create the sense that like they might actually be more successful. Like I think Lathe of Heaven, it's like anything's possible, and that's part of the like enchantment of the power, but that's what fucks it up. Whereas in this book, it's like there's actually a pretty like they know how things are going, and it's like set in a very specific span of like 50 years. And they're like, okay, we're overly familiar now. We really we kind of know how everything's going to happen from like this point to this point. And like, so we're in control. So like, I feel like the sense of control comes from the limited time frame. They're like, we fucking know like how this is going to happen. We'll send an agent back there. They'll wait at the exact street corner at the exact time that this historical figure is going to round it, and we'll punch him in the face, steal his money, and make him not do this thing. And like, so it's almost like how fucking bored and familiar they are with like the time frame that they're operating in is still, they're not in control at any point still. And that's supposed to be like kind of like the irony.
Yeah. Which I understand that too, but it also makes all of the most of the characters just incredibly like unimaginative when they're just thinking in this very like closed realm, and they're only thinking like, I have this power to time travel, and I'm only gonna go try to like save colonial Britain.
But yeah, that's right though. But that's absolutely like the problem is.
So if that's the point, then I understand it as like a critique of general bureaucracy and like kind of dim-witted bureaucratic people that have like a very limited range of imagination. But still, that's pretty boring for a time travel story.
Oh man, Paul, no, not since Doomsville have we dissented so.
Dude, I don't know. I had trouble with this one. It just seemed like, especially because this was written like 20 years after Lathe of Heaven, or 20 years after Lathe of Heaven. It just seemed like there was another story out there that, I mean, Lathe of Heaven wasn't about time travel, but in a way it kind of was.
There is a kind of like time is a flat circle, hyper convoluted. I mean, time travel. I mean, there is the curse of the genre.
Yeah,
time travel always ends up becoming super convoluted, and it is easy to get bogged down in the quote unquote logic of it. Like, I don't know. I think the last good time travel movie I saw was Primer, which I feel like.
I wanted to bring up Primer because I thought Primer did the mundane like creation of the time machine,
right?
And just like the general like first 20 minutes were like mundane and very scientific, and I think
like tech bros in their garage.
Tech bros, yeah, just like guys from Office Space, basically, that like decided to make a time travel device. I don't know.
Well, I think that I felt like, I mean, obviously Primer is a sort of like obvious like connection with the story. And I think that this is different in the sense that, I mean, the time travel mechanism is not described even in the detail that it's described in Primer. Like Primer is a pretty like, I feel like this is much more a story about the people that have access to time travel technology rather than the time travel technology itself. And Primer is about that too, obviously, because but I feel like this is even more so in that direction, if that makes sense.
I mean, the other parallels I have with Primer is when towards the end of the movie, the main character starts like seeing duplicates of himself. And I thought that in this story, when he starts like he sees the old version of himself, and he kind of like has
spoiler.
Winterset does.
Yeah. I liked all of that. When the madness kind of got out of control, and he didn't even know what place he had in the whole bureaucratic device anymore, and he's just kind of like wondering what the point of the whole thing was. I really liked all of that. And I like that conversation with the older self a lot. It was
Well,
very
yeah, I think that last couple chapters, or maybe it's only the last chapter, I forget exactly, but where we have this experience of this unnamed individual for most of it in this possible future that contains all of these races and species and social groups that do not exist. There's like dragons, they're called, I think, draconids in the stories.
Yeah.
And there's magi, which is some sort of weird undescribed humanoid species.
There's the hominids.
Right.
I think they're people, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, exactly. And it sort of is the description of an expedition by one of the members of the Otherhood. And he sort of realizes, okay, someone has broken the rules here. Someone went outside of the bounds of our time travel, right? They either went back before Cecil Rhodes died, or they went forward past when time travel was invented. And that actually turns out to be false, right? But they just failed to account for the ways that small, seemingly insignificant changes. I forget the example that they give in the story, but they have on staff at the Otherhood, they have a sort of mathematician whose job it is to calculate, like,
if we're doing Jeff Goldblum Jurassic Park style, he's the chaos mathematician.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Ian Malcolm of the Otherhood. And he sort of says, here's the sorts of the type of changes that might spiral out and affect things, and here are the ones that probably don't matter, right? But it turns out that in this future that this person who turns out to be Dennis finds himself in, things have sort of spiraled and sort of exponentially amplified themselves, almost like a feedback loop, right? Where it just gets louder and louder faster in a really short period of time. Because his argument is like, this future that he finds himself in is basically London in like 2006 or something. It's like 20 or 30 years past where Casper last discovers time travel.
Right.
And he says, how could the world have changed this much
in such a short
period of time outside of the realm of, what we had calculated to be allowable time travel wise.
Yeah.
And he gets a sort of lecture from this, magi.
I don't know.
By the way, we don't know we don't know what that is. And basically these people have sort of, in a weird way, become like slaves to their capricious changing of their reality.
Yeah.
And they've like noticed it and been like, this seems fucked up. Like, our world is kind of broken.
The Magi are brilliant enough to have realized through thousands of years of contemplation that their entire reality is predicated on the decisions of the Otherhood, and they're bummed out. They're like, it's stodgy British fucking weirdos in a oak and wooden paneled room eating fucking like beef.
But with lizard slaves.
Well, no, they don't have lizard slaves. The Otherhood doesn't have lizard slaves.
Well, no, but the Magi do. They have dragon lizard slaves.
Yes, they do. Who they know are going to overthrow them later for some reason. That's thrown in there. But yeah, it's like all these evolutionary changes that would have taken millions and millions of years to have occurred took place in the span of 30.
And I think that Matt, this is where I think the resonance with the Lathe of Heaven is really interesting, because in the Lathe of Heaven, Orr has his dreams and then he wakes up, and it's not just that he's changed the world, but the world has always been the way that he dreamt.
Right.
And it's the same thing here, right? So Winterset goes forward 10 years, and it's not that the world has changed over the course of those 10 years, but that the world has always been the way that it is 10 years in the future for 1,000 years in the past, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's another example of the Mandela effect, kind of. There's a little bit of that. The Magi's are the Mandela effect, like, Maya or something.
But you're kind of dead on. Like, I think the Magi have taken their experience of the Mandela effect as an indication of something greater, and have been so fucking Mandela affected, but it actually relates to destroyed potential realities that they were able to tease it back to, again, a bunch of British people in an oak paneled room eating beef and drinking cocktails.
Well, and so ultimately they say, right, like
they're like, fuck.
The Magi.
They're eating pickled dick.
Exactly. Pickled baby penises.
Foreskin rights. So, but it comes down to then the Magi kind of say like, well, one of you must have done something wrong. And it turns out, spoilers, that Dennis, when he was originally brought into the Otherhood by this stranger that he met in Khartoum way back in his, scare quotes, original reality, he was chosen because I just burped for anyone wondering why Matt's laughing. He was chosen because they wanted him to accomplish the time travel task of assassinating Cecil Rhodes at a specific time when his will was written in a specific way.
Yes.
And Dennis ultimately learns in the future that his past self was unable to do that. Right? Like he met Cecil Rhodes and he was inserted at the correct time in the timeline. And he went to Cecil Rhodes's sort of compound in Africa.
Groot Shear, sure.
Groot, like that. Groot Shear, some Dutch name or something. And he couldn't do it. He sort of had developed a sort of fondness for Cecil Rhodes and was unable to assassinate him. And he ultimately learns in this bizarre future timeline that his inaction in the past timeline essentially screwed everything up. Right? Is that your understanding? It's a very like intricate story.
I don't know, because that almost indicates that like the destruction of the Otherhood is actually what the problem is. And I don't know if that's actually what, I don't know. But I guess the other issue is that like time doesn't exist in this book in any linear sense like we're describing. It's like it's all kind of occurred and will keep occurring. And there's no way to avoid the existence of the Otherhood now that they're out there. And that even abstaining from the murder of Cecil Rhodes at this point doesn't matter.
It's very postmodern. It's very always already.
Yes. Yeah. Or Rust Cole, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking Rust Cole would like this book for sure.
Yeah, he'd be like, fuck yeah.
Fuck.
Damn.
Give me some Keystone.
Well, he drinks
he doesn't drink, he drinks Lone Star.
Lone Star, yeah.
You guys are freaking nerds.
That's your favorite show.
That's your favorite show, and you love
my
Rust
favorite
Cole.
show. It just shows how good my memory is. My memory is amazing.
Memory, time, what is it?
What is it even? I like that Denise, whatever, Winterset is also, you know, because there's no like consensus, but like the book itself and historically Cecil Rhodes has been considered a gay man. And I
had no idea. That's news.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yes, he
not that I care, it's totally fine.
It's totally fine,
Yeah.
whatever. But, you know, there's some like evidence that he was probably a closeted homosexual person who was, you know, a perennial bachelor and always, you know, sort of was only close to his like male servants and stuff like this. But like, so
that's part of the reason that Dennis is selected to go assassinate him, right?
That's what I mean. Dennis is literally like a honeypot operation because he's like a hot and 23 and exactly the physical specifications for what they know Cecil Rhodes is into sexually. So they don't tell him this because they're like, no, it's your special. You're like a cool agent, and we just value your abilities, and you're a very special boy, and we just need you to go do this. And they're literally getting him to go make Cecil Rhodes horny enough to invite him back to his place.
They're literally
shoot him.
They're literally Donald Trump last week. We love you. You're very special.
You're so special. We just need you to go do this thing.
Yeah, that plot point
democracy.
went totally over my head. I didn't even pick up on that.
I think it's pretty subtly rendered, but like I still think it comes through with like this kind of attachment that Dennis has, and like the pretty heavy-handed statement of like, and there were no female servants ever in Cecil Rhodes's like boys house, compound of men who go hunting and are strong and sleep in beds together.
I felt like, this could have been so. I almost wish that Crowley had extended this story into a longer form, because I felt like those scenes in the weird timeline with Cecil Rhodes and Dennis at Rhodes's compound in South Africa, in Rhodesia, with Greedo as his bodyguard. I thought that that's a deep cut. That's a deep cut for all you spine crack heads.
Yeah.
I thought that I could have spine crack.
No, they're just crackers.
Oh, damn it. It's a terrible awful joke to make when we're talking about South African British colonialism. But sorry, I could have read that for 200 pages, like just Dennis and Cecil Rhodes with their sort of strange romantic relationship at Rhodes's compound in South Africa. Like, I thought that was the most sort of enticing section of the entire novella for me.
Yeah, I think so too, because it's like, I mean, it might even be something that would make people mad potentially, but like Rhodes is pretty not sympathetically drawn, but like, he's you're muted, Gabe.
I was just agreeing. I think Rhodes is in a roundabout way sort of sympathetically drawn.
Yeah, he's just given his full he's given like a very like full human breadth and allowed sympathy, like I think intentionally so, because you're supposed to understand why Dennis would maybe, find some admiration.
Why he would not kill him.
Why he would not shoot him in the back of the head. And I also think it's funny because like the reason he needs to be killed is that they know were he to be allowed to live, he would not give as much of a shit about the British Empire and become cynical about it, and not leave a sum of money for anybody in his will, because he's like, I actually don't give a shit about all that anymore. And so they're like, so you have to shoot him right before he changes his mind. And like, it's just
exactly. Which I think, like, I don't know. I just
that's like funny.
It's funny, and it's very I don't know. I just felt like it was a smart use of the time travel device, because that's and it's a sort of wraparound, because that's sort of what Caspar Last was doing in inventing time travel originally. Like, he knew his grandfather was going to keep all of his papers in the attic of his home, and so he mails him this weird, obscure stamp, right?
That section of the book, this is going to sound like I've read Jocko Willink's book, but I haven't. I found.
Wait, what book?
Jocko Willink.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
Jocko Willink is like a military guy that's friends with Joe Rogan. But he wrote a book about like leadership, and I was going to say that like the Otherhood clearly should have known that he wasn't going to kill him. Like, I knew it from like the very start of the meeting. I was like, he's not going to kill him. They're picking the wrong guy. They're supposed to be like a really good like secret society, and I was like, there's no believability here for me at all. I was like, you can clearly see from this meeting he doesn't want to do it. He's just like a guy, and you're putting all this weight on his shoulders to like keep the timeline going, and he's the guy that's supposed to kill him. Like, you should probably see that he's not going to. So I found it like really unbelievable, or just like like a failure of leadership, as Jocko Willink would say.
I actually think that's a good point, Paul. And I kind of agree, because the whole lead up to Dennis agreeing to go back in time to assassinate Rhodes is basically Dennis coming to terms with the fact that this has already happened and that he's playing a rigged game, and that there's they are selecting me because they know I'm going to do it no matter what I think or say in the interim. And I think you're right that there's no real good explanation as to what accounts for Dennis's deviation from that already established past when he decides not to assassinate Cecil Rhodes. Like it's just sort of like this Deus Ex Machina, like free will intervening in a way that has never been previously established in the story. And so I think that's I agree that was a weakness, maybe. I don't know, Matt, was that something that bothered you, or do you think we're missing something? Or
no, it didn't really bug me. I just there was a point as well where I was like a little bit too spun around by the convolutions and what the implications of like reality shifting were at every moment, and like the exponential effects, the kind of like fucking butterfly chaos effects it was having on everything. And maybe this is just a weakness innately, but just to know what a plot hole would be.
I'm not saying it's a plot hole. I mean,
Pauler,
to kind of go back on what I said, it's like it might be because they are such a task to task system of people, and in their minds he already did it, so no matter what they say to him, he's going to do it. So maybe that makes sense of it a little bit more. At least for me it does.
Well, it reminded me of, and if any of you guys really want to avoid spoilers, take your headphones off or whatever, but I'm gonna do it for the content. But it reminded me of Devs, the recent show, where the conceit of the show is essentially that like Nick Offerman's character has found a way to like predict down to a subatomic particle all human behavior, right? And he has a sort of mapped out plan for a specific employee and whatever. And in the last episode, for no discernible reason that is never explained, she deviates from his plan. And it's just sort of this like, yay, free will moment. But it's not ever justified in a satisfying way. And I had that same sort of vibe with this conclusion.
Although
Sam Harris would have been like, what?
Yeah, true.
What?
Yeah, if anybody is from the intellectual dark web is listening, come on the podcast.
If anyone from the intellectual dark web is listening, stop listening.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Don't. Just kidding. Don't.
Just kidding. Yeah. We need every listen we can get, but stop producing.
Jordan Peterson, come on the podcast.
We'll talk about your favorite book, the one you read.
We have benzos.
Oh my god. Dude, a fucking like yacked out Jordan Peterson would be so gold to have talk about anything. Just he's like falling over. I do think that like
bring your daughter too.
Oh my god.
Sex addict Yoda, I am.
Michaela, you bring.
Blonde she is.
I think
kiss Abby Shapiro, she will.
Oh my god.
Oh, here we go.
Oh boy.
Let's keep
Why
going.
do they all have an alternate sister, daughter, or whatever?
They all do. Why is that?
I think Dennis is not the only person who is convinced via the fact of, or the questionable fact of having already technically done something, convincing them to do the thing. That's a device that happens like I think maybe several times in the book. So I think Dennis Winterset is also the president pro tem like whatever that's Latin, right? Pro tempora.
Yep, it just means you're occupying the office for
a time.
Yeah.
He kind of does break their rules by going into the future, which I think precipitates the quote unquote free will deviation.
But when we meet him, when we meet him as President Pro Tem, he is not even aware that his past self had gone into the future, right?
Right.
Like he's in the future searching for who broke the rules going into the future, and it's him.
Right. Yeah, and it's him. But like, I don't know if I don't think you get. There's no full explanation of orthogonal logic that's going to be clarifying on that point. But it is. I do think it's still a little bit more gray and inconclusive in terms of the question of free will.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's. I don't know. I do feel like the discussion with young Dennis before he becomes President Pro Tem, which is a process that we never see, it is discussed in a way that, I mean, I found satisfying, which is that like he's going through these motions in his head, like, I don't want to do this. I have no interest in going back in time and assassinating Cecil Rhodes. And by the way, I think we should talk about, or at least mention, that they have this fucking awesome ass clubhouse that is outside of space and time and has a bar that for some reason you still have to pay the bartender for. And
they're not barbarians.
Right. Okay, fair enough. And I want to go there. And I want to go to this outside of space and time clubhouse.
Well, and they even describe it as not necessarily hovering outside of time, but sort of their description is it's like the North Pole. Like you're in time, but everything you look down upon is south, quote unquote.
Yes. I actually thought that was a really brilliant way to describe like time travel, right? Like,
right.
You're at the North Pole and anywhere you look is down from you.
Yes.
And that is sort of describing their positionality in time.
Yeah, you found some sort of like physical ultimate vantage point within the temporal realm. It's very strange.
Yeah. And now I've lost my train of thought. But
the clubhouse, they're cool clubhouse.
Yeah, cool clubhouse. Yeah.
I didn't read what is it fucking called? That y'all read David Mitchell?
No.
Cloud Atlas, dude.
No, I never did.
He wrote something called it's called The Bone Clocks, which I read and I've completely almost forgotten, but biting on some of this conceit where like these weird monks exist like outside of time and space, like, and they're fighting throughout history this war for like two different
you talking about Doctor Strange, Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Yeah, I mean, like, it is the same shit, dude. Like, it's like imagine if like fucking Professor X and Magneto were bringing their two kind of like diametrically opposed fucking ideologies, and we're fighting over time and space about them.
Yeah, I would have preferred that. I would have preferred that for sure.
Yeah, of course you would.
I mean, I will say, just from a writing perspective, this story really reminded me of one of my favorite sci-fi writers, which is William Sloane. And Matt, we talked about this a little bit.
Oh yeah,
but William Sloane wrote a couple of, and this is going back to the I know it when I see it distinction. I would call both of those stories novels, but short novels. I mean,
right.
Novellas, maybe.
Long novellas, short novels.
Novelitas. Yeah, something like that.
Not short stories. Definitely not short stories.
And I think that it's called To Walk the Night and The Edge of Running Water are William Sloane's two novels. And I feel like he captures or I guess I should reverse that. Crowley captures a very similar vibe to what Sloane does, which is, I've heard people talk about it as cosmic horror, but I feel like that has like Lovecraft vibes, which I don't think is exactly what Sloane is doing or what Crowley is doing. But it's just this sense that like the universe and reality kind of like falls away under your feet and is like so much bigger than you could ever conceptualize it being.
Right.
And I feel like this story captured that vibe in a way that I have not encountered since reading Sloane for the first time. And I thought that was, I really appreciated it.
I just think Crowley as a writer, I'm bad at kind of like discussing the more technical aspects of like prose writing, but I think I liked it. I think he had very elegant ways of describing super complex things, which is good for a fantasy writer. Can I read something?
Please.
Yes.
This is I think this is kind of I think this is this is like a description of the kind of infinite regress that these Otherhood folks kind of find themselves in, making sure that the past, quote unquote, creates the perfect future. So he's talking to Jeffrey Davenant, who's like the main representative of the Otherhood who interacts with Dennis, and you know, his name's Geoffrey Davenant. He's like the most British man. So Dennis is kind of like asking him about
Did you say The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio?
No. That movie sucks.
The movie's good.
Oh, okay. Well, hold on. Different podcast. So Dennis is just asking, like, so, you know, your basic, because this is kind of earlier on. This is in 14, at least on the page 14 on the PDF. But like, he's asking the questions you'll ask is like, what the fuck are the results of this? What are you talking about? Like, you're a crazy old man. And he says, no doubt whatever result it did have would have to be reshaped as well. And the results of that reshaping reshaped. 2. The whole thing subtly guided all along its way toward the result desired. After all, if we can imagine how we might want to alter the past we do inherit, so we can imagine that any past might well be liable to the same imagining. That stupidities, blunders, short-sightedness would occur in a past we might initiate. Oh yes, it would all have to be reshaped with each reshaping. And then he just says, so Denny says, laughing, the possibilities are endless. And like,
yeah,
that's kind of the critique of it in general.
Well, I also think that's a good summary of like why, and maybe I'm going like a level too deep here, but I think that this is an interesting sort of critique of like why time travel fiction is really impossible, because there's no accounting for the sort of asymptotic, like absurd spiraling of effects. Like we just like certainly human brains cannot account for that, and it may be unaccountable for in general. Like there's, I hate to appeal to the butterfly hurricane chaos theory, you know, Ian Malcolm bullshit, but when you're talking about like things that affect time and the future, I don't know, it might have sort of greater purchase.
And also just that even more convolutedly, there might not really be a difference. Like,
well, and that's one of the things that begins the story, right? Which is that Casper Lass says, I don't even believe in time. Like, this is all ridiculous. And that's, I think, interestingly, not explicitly revisited.
Yes, it's like, it's a throwaway. I also think it's interesting that the Otherhood intercepts him in his past visit and just uses some bare bones bullshit lie, switch him up to get him off course.
Basically, Elon Musk offers him like $50 for his time travel technology.
Yeah. And shows him that his like stamp won't be valued at like anywhere close to what he thinks it is. And he's like, oh shit, but they just made a fake book to show him.
Right.
And it's just like the most basic grift. And they're just talking about how like you can be so brilliant that you can't even see like almost an idiotic grift happening in front of your face. Just like, oh, we are also capable of lying, you know.
Yeah. Well, Gabe said that he thinks that like writing a fiction novel about time travel is generally impossible. I don't know if I agree with that, but I will say that it kind of makes me think like why get into the this is more of a general critique of the book. I'm going to go back to that. Is like why get into anything political or philosophical when what am I trying to say? Like if the general notion of your point of making a time travel book is I'm losing my train of thought. I'm basically trying to say like why even make it?
Are you trying to ask if you have,
why did he make this book?
if you have a critique of reality, why do it through a genre that maybe is inherently nonsensical or pointless to write? Like,
yes,
does that
that's what I'm trying to
invalidate?
say.
Does that invalidate your critique of actual things that we as human beings can conceive of that like deserve a criticism in general? Is that the question?
That is exactly what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if like I can answer that, but mostly I think that like Crowley is at least saving himself by, I think, acknowledging that it's like a pointless endeavor to try and alter the world by these means, that this concept as for a genre is like just leads to a kind of infinite regress toilet fucking drain spiral into smaller and smaller increments of time to the point where it's like,
and
yeah,
I don't mind that point. Like, have you guys seen the show Dark on Netflix? It's really good. It's a German show and it's about time travel.
It's is that the one about there's like a mine or something?
Yeah, a tunnel. I saw like the first season of that.
I saw the first episode or two.
I've watched all 3 seasons now, and it's really frustrating because it's like the type of time travel show that like there is no free will. Like Sam Harris would love it. It's like you can't actually change anything that's happening. Everything that's set forward,
spoilers,
in motion is not. I mean, there's gonna be more. So maybe eventually they will be able to break the cycle. But with this book, the cycle was broken by Dennis by not killing what's his face?
Rhodes.
Yeah, like he broke.
But there's no explanation though. That's a little bit frustrating for me.
Well, yeah, that's why it is frustrating for me too. Is like if the point of talking about time travel in this way is that like there is no breaking of the cycle, there is no free will. It's only just realities like overlapping other realities. Then that point alone that he didn't kill him kind of evaporates that for me. Because in dark, it's like every time you think it's going to happen, it just doesn't, and it's really frustrating. But it's also a really kind of a refreshing way to depict time travel, because most movies they have a moment where they're like, oh, I'm going to actually like break through and change the past in a big way, and I'm making a choice that people thought I was going to make, but I'm not making it. But it's like every choice anyone makes is already like mapped out. And I just feel like this, because of that one moment, it kind of does away with the point of like the whole short story in a way, because like he did have free will in that moment and he didn't kill him.
Or did he?
Well, that's the issue, right? Is that if he does, where does it come from? Like, if he does suddenly gain free will in that moment, by what mechanism does that work? Because the last few pages before that happens, we've been interacting with a group of people who think they've figured it all out, right? And they've been jumping around in time for, I mean, years at least, right? Decades. And suddenly he upends that and just decides, I'm not going to do that. I just felt it was a little bit incongruous with the description of how finally they've been able to tune what they do and why they selected him in the first place, and his own sort of psychological process of resignation and being like, oh, well, I want to resist. I don't want to do this, but I just am, because they already know what's going to happen and I'm going to do it. So I did think there was a little bit of like a tonal like incongruity there.
Well, I think first of all they picked him to be because he's hot.
I know that, but I'm saying
no.
like,
Well, let me elaborate. So like they picked him because he's hot. Also, he's already proven to be he's young. He's a young man. He's like 23. He's proven to be kind of like susceptible to, I don't know, like being in awe of great men. And so I feel like you just have maybe two instances of that happening that just kind of contradict each other, where like initially he's like, wow, Jeffrey Davenant, what a dashing guy who seems to know it all. And like I'm in this cool clubhouse and everyone's talking about shifting time. And he's like, and then he just meets another kind of person he regards as a great figure and is swayed by that person instead.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying there. I actually think that's right. Like there are character reasons to understand why Dennis kind of falls for Rhodes, but in the metaphysics of the story, there's no explanation as to why he can overcome his predetermined time travel path.
Yeah, like I almost feel like if the rules set up in the story were like followed through, then he would have killed him by accident or something. Like he would, maybe his motives would change and he would realize what he's doing, but somehow he would still die. And to me, that would like make more sense with the
because the
whole
discourse with the rest of the Otherhood and Dennis is like, we picked you because you have to do it. We know he's gonna sort of have an attraction to you. We know he's gonna let you get close to him. We know you're gonna have the opportunity to do it, and we've seen it happen. You just are going to do it. And that's why he agrees to do it in the first place, is because he just sort of gives into that narrative.
But that's a narrative created by the Otherhood.
Well, I know, but then he does. I know. Well, but we don't know why they're fallible, though.
Because because they get high on their own supply. I don't know. I don't think it's like quite as outside. I agree with you that it bothered me too, but like, the Otherhood is prone to getting high on their own farts as well, and that's like their problem. Like they don't have a harness on this shit either. And they don't have control in the way they think they do. And so some sort of like, and also I think by the very creation of this kind of like time travel and its effects around this like one fucking closed loop of time that they're in is like, it's unclear to me what those effects really are. And I think that's made a little clear in the book, in the story.
I think you're also describing why I wanted this to be longer. Like I wanted, I would have loved an extra, 60 pages of Dennis in Rhodesia. And I would have loved an extra 60 pages of Dennis going back and forth and like traveling to the club multiple times and kind of like learning a little bit more about what they do and why they do it and how they do it. Like, I think that all of these things that we're talking about could have plausibly been filled out in really satisfying ways. And I wanted more, I guess.
Yeah. There was a bit I said, thought about Lathe of Heaven. Just a bit, not crazy amount of more pages, but just like a little fleshed out. There was times when I was like, that would be nice.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. And I know I'm being hard on the book, but I didn't actually hate it. I actually agree that like having more would actually be more fulfilling, because things could be more fleshed out. Moments could be expanded upon. and I would have probably gotten more out of it if it was. It felt a little bit rushed to me, like he was working in like a page count almost, and he had to like account like be within the bounds of this page count or something. I don't know, because it felt like a story that definitely could have been longer.
There's a little, I don't know if this is like helpful. This wasn't like clarifying necessarily, but like there's another little chunk on 72 that I thought was pretty good that I'll read. It just says, no matter that orthogonal logic refutes it, I cannot help believing that my present succeeds in time the other presents and futures that have gone into making it. I believe that as I grow older, I come to incorporate the experiences I have had as an older man in pasts and futures now obsolete, as though in absolute time I continually catch up with myself in the imaginary times that fluoresce from it, gathering dreamlike memories of the lives I have lived therein. Somewhere God, I have come to believe in God, there was simply no existing otherwise, interesting, is keeping these universes in a row and sees to it that they happen in succession, the most recently generated one last, and so felt to be last, no matter where along it I stand. I don't know, like, that felt like a bit of an attempt to describe both like the, you know, the experience, the like how it feels to have gone down the rabbit hole of being one of these weird fucking time travel people, and also like describing like the shortcomings of humans, the human ability to like comprehend it by maybe it's a cop out throwing in God as like the Hail Mary of like, I don't know. There's another thing.
I mean, I didn't read it. I didn't see it that way. I don't think there was like a Hail Mary Deus Ex Machina. I thought that was a beautiful passage though, for sure.
Yeah.
And at the end you get Earthsea basically. It's just the sea.
Jason Momoa.
Yeah, Jason Momoa's swimming around, rippling muscles, swimming around.
I mean, one of my favorite sections from the book was sort of early on, and this was maybe I was in an overly political mindset potentially then, but he was talking about sort of like
oh, really, Gabe?
Never. Not something I do often or ever, but he was talking about the difference between the British and the American empires, and I thought this was a really sort of interesting point. And he says, if one thought how odd it was, and if one thought then of what should have been natural empires, enormous spreads of restless real property, like America or Russia, turning in on themselves, making themselves into what seemed to Dennis, who had never seen them, to be very small places, then it did seem to be destiny of a kind. Not a destiny to be proud of particularly, nor ashamed of either, but one whose compelling inner logic could only be marveled at. And I thought, like, just thinking about America as this enormous place that we have all kind of like fucked up to make very small. I just thought it was very compelling.
Or that, you know, the self-regard turns into a kind of navel gazing nationally. That's why this story in particular is so parochial, like I said at the beginning, like, because I was thinking about orthogonal logic, right? It's like an alternate timeline branches off like the main one at a right angle, and they just keep doing that. So you get a spiral, right? Like if you just keep doing that repeatedly. So it's like kind of like rowing a boat with one oar. You just go in a circle. And like I was just thinking about that is kind of what was happening to these people, which is why you just keep drilling down temporally. You're muted, Paul. And the reverberations keep having an even more intense reaction to the future. You know what I mean? Like a little too heady for me. I'm an English major, so I don't get it. But like, you drill down in a spiral that goes even more and more locally.
That's not a good thing to say when you're analyzing a book.
I'm sorry.
English major.
And a little bit of old, shitty self.
Should be the best.
I thought you were a communications major. Am I wrong?
Double major.
Ooh, king shit.
Double.
Yeah, fucking double up. Give it all to me.
Double those credits. Go to grad school.
But just so the more local temporally that they're operating within, the more like crazy the shit that's happening in the future ends up being. There's like an inverse relationship or something there, which is kind of, I
Which
don't know.
also happens in Late of Heaven.
Kind of. It's just different.
What would you guys give this book on sci-fi elements?
Dude,
it was soft sci-fi. everything was so soft.
We got to get Daniel Green at Daniel Green on Twitter, at Daniel Green YouTube, to adjudicate how sci-fi this book is.
Is that his shit?
Yeah, I'm just joking.
But yeah,
I do. I mean, before we break away from the tangent of the assassination, I want to go back to it for 1 second. If that's okay. I think Matt, you were talking about the Otherhood. You know, they're not totally in control of time. They think they are. So even if they predict that Dennis is gonna kill him, they don't absolutely know. And I also think, like, if no one actually knows how time travel is affected and how people are going to react to whatever given circumstance, even if he's killed him a bunch of times, I forget if or was it just the one time, or had he gone and killed him a bunch of times? I can't remember.
I think it's multiple.
That was the whole thing. Like, he had already done this.
Yeah. So even though the Otherhood believes that he's going to do it again, I think possibly because no human can understand the effects of time travel, that means that there is a moment where he could not do it, and it doesn't take away from the overarching effects of time travel.
And it all seems to end no matter what in that kind of forest in the ocean imagery.
It's sort of like Neo. Neo's the anomaly.
Go on. But Neo is programmed into the Matrix, dude.
Well, think of the Matrix like time travel.
What are you saying?
No. Wait. I actually literally wrote something about the Matrix. But
never mind.
But in a slightly different context. It was when the unnamed time traveler, who we later find out is Winterset, Dennis, is hanging out with the Magus in his sort of hall. I think it's on 30 in the PDF that we have, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Where the mage starts talking to him about, like, we've discovered a sort of like flaw in the world, and we've come to the conclusion that it's like something outside of our control, like it's one of your fault. Yeah, so this is like right on the bottom.
For centuries we've studied.
I was going to start a little bit below that, but yeah, like last knew the Major said, all false, all imaginary, all generated by the wishes and fears of others. All that I am, my head, my heart, my house, not the world's doing or time's, but yours. The opacity of his eyes turned to the president pro tem was fearful. You have made me, you must unmake me. And I literally wrote on that line, I was like, the Matrix. Like, this is basically like the Matrix. It's a world that people are living and doing, you know, the normal sort of marginalia of day-to-day life, but it's created by something outside of their control, and they come to realize that.
Right. And they even describe the Otherhood as like fucking what's that Gnostic creature, the god that's not quite God, but like a lesser god who creates a flawed world. Like, goddamn, why can't I remember what that deity is called? But it's like, that's what, do you know?
Tiger King.
Gandalf.
It has a tiger face. It has like a lion face. Fuck, why can't I remember? Whatever. It's yeah, and it's like the whole point is that the realization of this this kind of lesser creature having created your reality is like deeply disturbing. And you're like, oh, this is disappointing as fuck. Like it's this thing made the world. Like I hate this. I'm gonna rail against this. And I feel like that's what the Magi are like. They're like, I'd actually rather be dead, in a sense, than live with the knowledge that your ass created all of known reality, which is also shitty because I think it's supposed to be indicating that it's like at this point just out of whack and fluctuating all the time, so that it's like almost physically uncomfortable for certain beings in the future to live in.
Yeah, the Magi are basically in Zion.
Yeah, the Magi says, "I long to die." That's how that chapter ends.
That was a Matrix reference. I mean, Matt, to defend myself, when you said that Neo is written into the Matrix, I mean, the movies depict the one Neo that breaks away from the pattern. So that's kind of my point.
That's true.
Even
It's been a minute since I've watched Revolution or whatever the other one was.
Yeah.
What's the final one?
I think it's Revolutions.
Right. He talks to the cloud of nanobots. It's a face.
I literally
What's
have
the
only seen the first movie, and I only saw it once.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool,
Movies,
Gabe.
Not Gabe's thing.
I only watched like cool, obscure, good things.
Oh, shout out to anyone who's listening now for being hipster and cool and listening to a kind of like niche, obscure thing.
Yeah, let's just
Guys, why don't you
let's
all
just-
give yourself a pat on the back?
Pat on the everyone.
Right now.
Everyone.
Yeah. Good for you.
pat away. Let's name other niche obscure things.
The Matrix 2. Yeah.
Sonic Battle Speedrun World Records.
Nice.
Damn, Sonic Battle. That's not a great game.
All right, let's talk about
Yeah, let's do it.
And you guessed it, folks. It's we already just did read another book, so relax. We're gonna sort them into hats.
We done just did read another book.
We already
motherfuckers.
did. So you can't come at us with that.
All right, so let's talk about Casper last. What house would he be sorted into?
I think he's kind of like Hermione because he has a time turn. He is a time turner, which Hermione had in.
Okay, that's a fair point. Matt's laughing for no reason.
I'm still the bit still makes me laugh. Like just the bit itself still makes me laugh. It's just like
I actually think he's a straight Ravenclaw. Straight up.
I kind of think so too, especially because he instantly wanted to destroy his own discovery.
Yeah,
that's the big thing. Again, that's like just casually said and is like I think huge. He's like, you know, I already like figured out how to do it. Like problem solved. I don't need this like accoutrement that goes with it. I don't need all this bric-a-brac. I'm just gonna throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Fucking Ravenclaw.
Just like Doc from Back to the Future, he wants to destroy it too, and same type of character.
Did Doc want to get rid of the DeLorean?
He wanted to destroy it, I think, by the end of the movie, or maybe the end of the second movie.
Yeah, there were
He was
three. So
he was a Ravenclaw.
we're not talking about. So we're all pretty much like that's a straight across the board Ravenclaw for Casper.
Yeah, Casper's a Ravenclaw.
Dennis
Winterset. Gryffindor.
Yeah, soft Gryffindor.
Soft Gryffindor.
Yeah, dude, fuck yeah, though. That's right. Like,
well, because he broke the rules of free will.
He did
Because of his own sort of courage.
Right. He would have just been Hufflepuff.
Right.
Were he loyal and just doing the bidding, but he has to do the time breaking move, and that's Gryffindor as hell.
Okay, so we all agree Gryffindor. What about the number one Rhodesian Greedo?
Cecil? I
was joking. Oh,
damn
wow.
it.
Okay, wow. That was a wrap. That was a wraparound joke for all you spine crack heads to our first episode.
Dude, I get it. I got it. It just took me a second.
You don't have to say you got it, man. I'm talking to the listeners.
Oh,
to all you crackers out there.
Oh
You get
God,
it?
do we really have to call our fans crackers? We probably should.
I thought we decided on calling them the Reading Rainbows.
All right, listen, crackers. Greedo is a Rhodesian.
Can I be Uncle Cracker?
Greedo the Rhodesian shot first.
He can be
Yes.
Uncle Cracker. I'll be Nephew Cracker.
All right, who else do we need to put in the house? Okay, wow. Nephew Cracker.
Jeffrey Davenant.
Yeah, Davenant. Gosh, maybe Gryffindor too.
I
Why?
think there's not enough. There's not like enough about him.
He feels like Cedric Diggory to me.
Well, he's a Hufflepuff.
Oh, is he really? Shit.
Oh my
Maybe
God.
Maybe
I
everyone
always
who's
forget. I always forget.
everyone who's a fucking so super loyal to the concept of the British Empire. Maybe that's Hufflepuff. They're like everything
Because
for my bay, the
because
British Empire.
That's true. That's a good point.
They're so loyal. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, he's a Hufflepuff. He's a Hufflepuff.
Cecil
Hufflepuff.
Rhodes.
What about Cecil Rhodes himself?
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, if we say something good, we will be racist.
And so is every Rhodes scholar, though.
Because they accept his blood money.
Yeah, that's right. You heard
I think
me.
he's a Gryffindor. I would say Gryffindor, soft Gryffindor.
Bad Gryffindor.
The scene where he was Dennis was about to assassinate Cecil Rhodes on the sort of veranda looking out over the lawn where the lion was there.
Mm.
It reminded me of the assassination scene from The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. One of my favorite, one of my absolute favorite movies. By the way, go watch it. It is the best unknown Western ever made. It's better than some of the originals. It's better than some of the Leone movies. It's fucking incredible. It's Brad
It's
Pitt's
also
best role.
best performance ever. by
Casey
Brad Pitt,
Affleck
for sure.
was absolutely robbed from supporting supporting actor.
Supporting Affleck.
How dare you?
Supporting
He's been
Affleck.
supporting Affleck.
He's been trying
That
his
was
whole
such a-
career to avoid that.
That was the biggest Freudian slip on any podcast ever. Supporting Affleck.
Oh God, Casey, I'm sorry.
Casey, come on the podcast, bro.
Casey, come on the pod. That role was
You're a
better
king.
than
You're a
anything
king.
your brother has ever done. No fucking question.
Oh, no question. Better than Batman.
Better than Batman.
Even, yes.
Anyway, that scene where Dennis decides to not kill Cecil Rhodes, it just reminded me of a very it was almost like a riff on the scene where Robert Ford assassinates Jesse James in that movie. And I could hear the music. It was such a vibe. I loved it.
That's not a spoiler either because history.
Facts.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas this ostensibly about history, but it would be a spoiler because it's false history.
Time travel history.
I also like the idea of like him feeling time fully envelop him and remove the out, which was just kind of cool as an idea. Like, ooh, it's like a freaking you being shrink wrapped into time, you know?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
That must be cozy in kind of like a Temple Grandin kind of way.
But it almost but it felt
your
like
little thunder shirt.
I literally have 2 of those for my dogs.
Yeah, you gotta have them.
They don't work.
They work. They work for my dog. It's okay though.
Who else
But
needs
yeah.
to go? Who else needs to go in a house?
How about old Dennis?
Punish Dennis.
Punish Dennis. Gryffindor. Easy Gryffindor.
Yeah.
Gryffindor.
He gets it. He just gets it.
Yeah.
That's basically it, right?
I think that's
Yeah.
it.
I think that's the major players.
Yeah.
There was some ambiguity with like who was the president pro tem the whole time, but
It was Dennis.
It was
it
Dennis.
him the whole time?
Yeah.
The whole time.
It was always
Okay.
Dennis.
Oh, okay, it was always Dennis.
He's
Okay.
kind of like the alpha and omega of the Otherhood itself. So like,
It's like it's like the guy from I forget the story, the Soul of Wood story from a couple weeks ago. He's like, I'm the one at the window, always. It's always Dennis.
oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
God.
Why can't I remember the fucking name?
I think it's literally just called The Window is the name of the story.
No, the freaking Gnostic false god.
I don't know what you're on about.
Gandalf.
It's got to be Gandalf.
Elrond.
Just give me 2 seconds.
All right, Paul, let's name some more Lord of the Rings characters while Matt looks up this obscure reference he's trying to think about.
It's not obscure.
Right,
That
Galadriel.
All right, Balrog.
Okay, Tom Bombadil.
Oh, good one. Frodo Baggins.
Bilbo Baggins.
Did you say Galadriel already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sauron.
Saruman.
Oh my God, Gandalf the White.
the demiurge.
Gandalf the Grey.
The Urukai. No, it's called
Sam
the
Gamgee.
the demiurge.
That's
The
not a
demiurge.
character that's unique to a literary universe. That's a concept.
But I thought it was Gnostic in origin.
Yeah.
That's all I was getting at.
All right.
Don't be mad at me. Why are you mad at me?
This podcast is over and canceled. I hate it.
Matt is kicked off.
Come on, guys.
All right,
Come
I'll see.
on.
We'll see you next week when it's just me and Paul. Just kidding.
We're gonna read The Hobbit.
This is a coup, just like the one we almost had.
Whoa, topical.
Oh, too soon.
All right, let's do some scores on this novella, boys.
Okay.
Matt, you go.
I go last, don't I?
Right, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with a 2.4. I mean, if 2.5 is average, it's one knock below average, so that's not that terrible.
It's a 3.84 per me.
For me.
For me?
For me.
Para me. God damn it, Jinx.
Oh man.
That was real time.
No, I mean-
People are gonna think
I
that
mean-
was edited.
Nah, it wasn't. Believe us,
Okay.
please.
Before you go, Matt,
Haters
I'll
will
just
say it's photoshopped.
my low score is because I like a good, solid, hard sci-fi story, and this was so soft. And if I'm gonna read a time travel book, I want more.
I know. Paul, you need your throbbing tumescent sci-fi.
This is a shout out to. I want to shout out the movie Time Crimes, which is a Spanish movie that is awesome. It made me want to watch Time Crimes. I'm gonna watch it tonight. Much better, 8 out of 10, or
Palate.
10 out of 10.
The sorbet of
travel.
time travel movies. You can just clear that palate.
Yeah, just don't be soft with me. If you're gonna do time travel, be hot. Like, stick it up my rectum. That time machine, you know.
Good lord. On that note, my score is a 3.7.
All right.
Yeah.
Why? I'm always the one who gives the highest scores. Am I just soft? If you want your book to get a good sympathetic review, send it to us and I will review it positively. Almost certainly.
I might just be taking the scoring system way too seriously, where I'm like, it has to be so
I just
sick
think,
if it's a 4 and
we're also not dummies. Like, we're not gonna pick bad books. Like, none of us is ever gonna pick a garbage book. You know what I mean? Like, if we were literally, I think our scores would be more sort of like distributed toward the mean if we just grabbed random crap off the shelf.
right.
But we're not going to do
Yeah,
that.
I mean-
because we're not dummies.
Yeah, I mean, this is scaled for my own personal enjoyment, and if we cycled in some like dull duds, it would be a much different scoring system. But I'm just saying, like, I'm never gonna read this book again ever. I'm gonna forget about it one day. So it's 2.4.
And I'm pretty close to you. I'm just picking a 3.7.
None of that makes sense. I still picked 3.84.
Right.
Okay.
3.76.
That's not close to what Paul said.
What do you mean close to what Paul
You said you were so close to Paul, but you're literally an entire...
I said to you.
Heard.
So that's not like we're not actually that far off in our regard of it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Okay.
Thank you. Come again.
Ooh.
I didn't say it in the accent. I just said the phrase.
You kind of did. You were trailing.
I would say we cracked that open like a coconut.
Yeah, we did.
All right. Gabe is basically Hari Kondobalu to me right now. He's mad that I said it.
I'm literally no. Oh my god. I'm just saying, like, don't email us about Matt's racist accent because Matt is a racist.
And that we called Cecil Rhodes a Gryffindor. Don't email us about that either.
Ooh, yeah, no, definitely not. Well, okay, wait. We should clarify. Gryffindors can be fucking evil as shit.
Yeah,
Yes,
every house we made clear that every house has the capability of being horrific monsters.
Yeah, just because you're in Gryffindors doesn't mean you're good. You can be in, like, literally Hitler was a Gryffindor. No, I'm
just like was a great man and
every house can rape.
Oh man,
just like every house can poop their pants.
I'll be
just
working on that
like
song.
every podcaster sings a sad song.
They say
goodbye to our non-existent listeners. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.